Welcome to the final lesson in this course on how hackers actually think. We've spent our time together exploring technical methodologies, attack vectors, and defensive strategies. But here, we're going to go deeper. We're going to explore the most complex system of all, the human mind behind the attack. Understanding cybersecurity isn't just about understanding technology. As Dr. Mary Aiken, professor of cyber psychology at Capital Technology University and academic advisor to both Europol and Interpol, has emphasized throughout her career, good cybersecurity is fundamentally about understanding human behavior. Her work, which inspired the CBS television series CSI Cyber, has consistently demonstrated that we cannot truly protect systems and data without understanding the people who threaten them. Let's see if we can pull back the curtain on the psychological forces that drive individuals towards cybercrime, from the curious teenager experimenting with code to the sophisticated ransomware operator targeting critical infrastructure. The fundamental truth that's easy to forget when we're staring at logs and indicators of compromise, or when we're hearing about attacks in our organization and trying to figure out how can we be protected, is that behind every cyber attack is a human being with motivations, emotions, and psychological needs. Gerald Matthews, a professor of psychology at George Mason University, who has been selected to work on the Intelligence Advanced Research Project's Activities Resend program, has noted that studying hacker psychology presents unique challenges. As he explained in a 2024 interview, it's a challenging topic to address because hackers, of course, tend to be somewhat secretive. There aren't many opportunities to study hacker psychology. Despite these challenges, Matthews and his colleagues have established that the current understanding of hacker behavior draws from several key areas of psychological study. Chief among these is human performance research, particularly how emotional states influence decision-making. As Matthews observed, hackers themselves are under pressure and potentially anxious about getting caught. They're anxious about looking foolish to the people they're working with. This is a critical insight. We often might imagine cybercriminals as cold, calculating machines, but they experience stress, fear, ego-driven anxiety, and social pressure just like anyone else. These emotional vulnerabilities can actually be exploited by defenders, which is precisely what the IARPA Resend program, the IARPA Resend program, aims to accomplish. Kimberly Ferguson-Walter, the IARPA program manager overseeing this initiative, explained the core concept to Cyberscoop in 2023. When you look at how attackers gain access, they often take advantage of human limitations and errors, but our defenses don't do that. The program, she said, is essentially about flipping the table to make the human factor the weakest link in cyber attacks. So what drives people to engage in cybercriminal activity? The research consistently shows that motivations exist on a broad spectrum, and understanding where an attacker falls on this spectrum can help us predict their behavior and develop appropriate defense strategies. The most straightforward motivation, of course, is money. Financial gain remains the primary driver for a significant portion of cybercriminal activity. Cyber attacks provide opportunities to make money quickly and with relative anonymity. Even basic ransomware campaigns can generate thousands of dollars from a single victim, while selling stolen data on dark web marketplaces can be extraordinarily lucrative, with full identity packages and financial information fetching over $1,000 per record. The rise of what researchers call cybercrime as a service has lowered the barrier to entry dramatically. Aspiring cybercriminals no longer need advanced technical skills to monetize their activities. They can rent the malware, tools, or botnets needed to launch attacks. It's become, in effect, a gig economy for cybercrime. But money is definitely not the sole or even primary driver for many cybercriminals, particularly in the UK and similar developed nations. The UK's National Crime Agency has conducted extensive research on this subject and found that for many offenders, especially younger ones, financial motivation takes a back seat to something more primal, the thrill of the challenge. Kevin Mitnick, who was once the FBI's most wanted hacker and later became one of the world's most foremost security consultants before his death in 2023, was perhaps the most famous famous example of this motivation. In an NPR interview about his memoir, Ghost in the Wires, Mitnick stated unequivocally, "My motivation for hacking was all about the intellectual challenge, the seduction of adventure, and most importantly, the pursuit of knowledge." What made Mitnick's case so perplexing to law enforcement and judges was that he never monetized his activities. He broke into the systems of over 40 major corporations, including Motorola, Nokia, and IBM, but never sold the data or used it for financial gain. As he explained, hacking itself was the reward he was after, not the information obtained. Mitnick later reflected on this addictive quality. "I have clients all around the world that hire me to break in," he said, "and I get the same type of endorphin rush, and I have the same type of enjoyment that I experienced when I was a hacker." This neurological reward system is something researchers have identified across the hacker population. Many hackers experience a dopamine-driven thrill when overcoming security obstacles, creating a neurological reward loop similar to what we see in gambling addiction. Some cybercriminals are motivated by political, social, or ideological beliefs. Hacktivists use their technical skills to advance causes they believe in, whether that's exposing corporate wrongdoing, disrupting government operations they view as unjust, or drawing attention to social issues. Nation-state actors represent another category of ideologically motivated hackers. Groups linked to countries like China, Russia, Iran, North Korea routinely infiltrate foreign corporations, governments, and critical infrastructure systems. These are not the only countries that people are hacking from. That's important to note. But these are the ones that have been getting the most attention. These state-sponsored groups have resources, capabilities, and strategic objectives that set them apart from traditional cybercriminals. Revenge represents a deeply personal motivation behind many cyber attacks. Disgruntled employees, former partners, or dissatisfied customers sometimes turn to hacking as a tool for retaliation. These attacks are not about financial gain, but about causing harm to those they believe have wronged them. What makes revenge-motivated attacks particularly dangerous is that they often involve insider knowledge. A former employee who was terminated knows the internal systems, understands the vulnerabilities, and may still have credentials or access paths that haven't been properly revoked. Research from the Cybersecurity Education Initiative indicates that insider threats accounted for approximately 20% of cybersecurity breaches in 2023, and revenge is frequently a driving factor. The UK's National Crime Agency has highlighted a clear trend in their research. Ego is often the primary driver behind young hackers' actions. Whether it's seeking acceptance with online hacking communities, proving themselves to peers, or simply showing off their capabilities, the motivation is fundamentally about status and recognition. People want to feel like they're good at something. People want to prove that they're good at something. People want to get pats on the back. For some people, for a lot of young people, that's hacking. And as we think about this status and recognition, this aligns with research showing that hacking communities function with clear hierarchies. Cybercrime forum users are assigned to groups corresponding to their social status on the site, ranging from introductory membership levels like newbie to higher status ranks like moderator or administrator. The hacking culture places strong emphasis on abilities and skills, which dictate social standing within these communities, encouraging the acquisition of knowledge and pursuit of challenge, and rewarding success with status. So let's think about, instead of motivations, let's think about the underlying psychological characteristics that researchers have identified among cybercriminals. In 2002, psychologists Delroy Paulhaus and Kevin Williams at the University of British Columbia published groundbreaking research on what they termed the dark triad, a constellation of 3 personality traits that, while not clinical disorders, represent darker aspects of human personality: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Narcissism is characterized by grandiosity, an inflated sense of self-importance, and a need for admiration. Machiavellianism involves a tendency toward manipulation, strategic thinking for personal gain, and a willingness to deceive others to achieve objectives. Psychopathy is characterized by impulsivity, thrill-seeking behavior, reduced empathy, and diminished anxiety about consequences. Research has consistently found that individuals Individuals who score high on these dark triad traits may be more likely to engage in cybercriminal behavior. A study published in Frontiers in Psychology examined the relationship between dark triad traits and cyberbullying, finding significant correlations between all three traits and online aggressive behavior. However, we must be careful not to oversimplify. As researchers have noted, using dark triad traits to evaluate individuals should be approached cautiously for practical, ethical, and privacy reasons. White hat hackers who use their skills ethically may share some of these traits, particularly the thrill-seeking aspect, without engaging in criminal behavior. One striking psychological characteristic among cybercriminals is a diminished capacity for empathy. The ability to understand and share the feelings of others appears conspicuously reduced in individuals who engage in cyber extortion and other harmful online activities, enabling them to rationalize their actions and justify the harm inflicted upon their victims. This empathy deficit is amplified by what researchers call psychological distance. The digital realm creates a buffer between attacker and victim. When you're sitting at a keyboard, the people whose data you're stealing or whose systems you're disrupting are abstract entities, not flesh and blood human beings. This dehumanization makes it easier for attackers to detach themselves from the human consequences of their actions. This brings us to one of the most important psychological concepts for understanding cybercriminal behavior, the online disinhibition effect. In 2004, Dr. John Suler, a professor of psychology at Rider University, published a seminal paper identifying 6 factors that interact to create disinhibition in online environments. The first factor is dissociative anonymity, the belief that one's true identity is hidden online. The second is invisibility, the fact that others cannot see you physically. The third is asynchronicity, the time delay in online communication that allows people to hit and run without facing immediate consequences. The fourth is solipsistic introjection, the tendency to experience online interactions as voices in one's head rather than real people. The fifth is dissociative imagination, the feeling that online spaces exist in a separate, almost game-like reality. And the sixth is minimization of authority, the flattening of social hierarchies online. Suler distinguished between what he called benign disinhibition, where people might share more openly or show unexpected kindness, and toxic disinhibition, where people engage in aggressive, criminal, or otherwise harmful behaviors they would never attempt in person. For cyber criminals, this toxic disinhibition is particularly relevant. Research has demonstrated that online disinhibition positively predicts cybercrime perpetration, and this relationship is mediated through moral disengagement. In other words, the online environment makes it easier for individuals to mentally disconnect their actions from their moral standards. One of the most concerning trends in cybercrime is the increasingly young age of offenders. The UK's National Crime Agency reports that 61% of hackers begin their activities before the age of 16. The average age of suspects and arrests in National Cybercrime Unit investigations has been just 17 years old. Dr. Mary Aiken has extensively researched youth pathways into cybercrime, emphasizing the need for early intervention and education to redirect technical talent toward ethical applications. As she noted, young people who get involved with cybercrime often do so while exploring their curiosity, without fully understanding the extreme consequences their actions can have. The pathway typically begins innocuously. According to NCA research, about 61% of young hackers started by simply experimenting with online games or coding. Many begin frequenting gaming forums where they learn about cheats, and from there, they discover hacking forums. The progression from modifying video games to more serious cybercriminal activity can happen gradually, with each step feeling like a small escalation. The NCA's research has identified several common factors in these pathways. First, there's the low barrier to entry. Off-the-shelf hacking tools requiring minimal technical expertise are readily available, often advertised openly on low-level hacking or gaming forums, complete with video guides and step-by-step tutorials. Second, there's the social network effect. Online gaming communities can serve as recruitment grounds for cybercriminal activity. Young people who perceive themselves themselves as socially isolated in the real world may find a sense of belonging and recognition in hacking communities. Third, there's the perception of low risk and low consequences. The law and its consequences are rarely discussed in these communities, and if the topic arises, it's generally dismissed. Debrief subjects have told the NCA that they did not seriously consider law enforcement until someone they knew was caught. Perhaps most troubling is the finding that about 40% of young cybercriminals surveyed said they didn't even view their actions as wrong, seeing hacking more as a game than a serious crime. A critical question for understanding the psychology of these offenders is, how do cybercriminals justify their actions to themselves? Albert Bandura's theory of moral disengagement provides a useful framework. Moral disengagement refers to the psychological mechanisms people use to convince themselves that ethical standards don't apply to them in particular situations. Research has shown that cybercriminals employ several such mechanisms. The first is moral justification, reframing harmful actions as serving a higher purpose. A hacktivist might believe they're exposing corporate corruption or fighting for social justice, making their illegal actions feel righteous. The second is euphemistic labeling, using sanitized language to obscure the nature of the actions. Hackers might talk about pen testing rather than breaking into systems, or describe stolen data as liberated information. The third is diffusion of responsibility. In hacking groups and cybercrime syndicates, individuals may feel less personally accountable because responsibility is distributed across multiple actors. The fourth is displacement of responsibility, attributing one's actions to external pressures or authority figures. Some hackers justify their actions by blaming inadequate security on the part of their targets, essentially arguing that if systems were properly protected, they couldn't have been breached. The fifth is dehumanization of victims. As we discussed earlier, the digital distance between attacker and victim facilitates viewing targets as abstract entities rather than real people. Corporations become faceless monoliths, and individual victims become mere data points. So what do we do with all this knowledge? How does understanding hacker psychology improve our defensive posture? Well, we can design security awareness training that addresses the psychological tactics attackers use. Understanding social engineering becomes more effective when we recognize the persuasion principles and cognitive biases that make it work. And we can develop more psychologically informed defensive technologies. The IARPA Rescind program specifically aims to build software that exploits attackers' cognitive vulnerabilities. For example, honeypots and deception technologies can be designed to trigger the sunk cost fallacy, encouraging attackers to continue investing time and resources in a fruitless pursuit. We can create better intervention programs for at-risk youth. Understanding the pathways that lead young people into cybercrime allows us to develop targeted education and redirection programs. As Dr. Aiken and others have emphasized, early intervention to highlight the consequences of criminality of illegal hacking could significantly reduce its attractiveness to children and teenagers. And we can improve our threat modeling by incorporating psychological profiles of likely adversaries. Understanding whether you're likely to face financially motivated cybercriminals, ideologically driven hacktivists, or nation-state actors helps you prioritize defenses and anticipate attack patterns. Finally, and most importantly, we can recognize and address the insider threat more effectively. Understanding the psychological factors that drive insider threats, particularly revenge motivation and moral disengagement, helps organizations better develop offboarding procedures, access controls, and monitoring for at-risk employees. As we conclude this course, I want to leave you with a thought from Mary Aiken's book, The Cyber Effect. We cannot address the challenges of cybersecurity without understanding what it means to be human online. The hackers we've discussed, from curious teenagers to sophisticated criminal enterprises, are not mysterious alien entities. They are humans responding to psychological needs, social pressures, and environmental incentives. Some are driven by greed, others by curiosity, others by ideology or revenge, or the simple thrill of solving a complex puzzle. Understanding these motivations doesn't excuse cybercriminal behavior, but it does give us powerful tools for prediction, prevention, and intervention. When we know why people hack, we can better anticipate how they'll attack, what defenses might deter them, and how we might redirect potential offenders toward legitimate applications of their skills. Remember Kevin Mitnick's journey, from the FBI's most wanted to a trusted security consultant advising the very organizations he once targeted. His transformation demonstrates that the technical curiosity driving much hacking can be channeled productively. The skills that make someone a dangerous attacker can also make them an exceptional defender. As you move forward in your cybersecurity journey, I encourage you to keep the human element central to your thinking. The most sophisticated technical defenses will fail if they don't account for human psychology, both the psychology of the attackers trying to breach them and the psychology of the users and administrators who must operate them. Thank you for joining me throughout this course on how hackers actually think. I hope you'll take these insights and apply them to make our digital world a safer place.